we can discuss the Convention on the Right of the Child, its general features, and then discuss in particular two more concrete ideas. The first one is the concept of the best interest of the child, what it means, how it applies in practice. And the second thing is to, and this is an exercise actually for you, to rely on the the general comment on the right to water from the Socioeconomics Committee, and try to identify or to develop similar features with regard to one particular provision of the right from the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Which means that you will have to apply in the context of one particular article the tools of respect, protection, and protection. Before that, a few words on the Human Rights Council. I've asked you to read the chapter from the shooter and to navigate the webpage of the Council. Could someone give me, this has no critical aspect in it, it's merely an issue of knowledge. I would even call it dry knowledge. This is not the purpose of this seminar, this is mainly for undergrad modules, but just to make sure we have a, the big picture is there, that we have all the information we need with regard to the UN system. What is the Human Rights Council?
It's the forerunner, not the forerunner, the replacement of the Human Rights Commission.
Yes. More on that?
It is an intergovernmental body within the United Nations, and it's made by 47 states from different regions around the world, and they are responsible for the protection and promotion of all human rights in the world.
Okay, yes. Is it made by 47 states?
Wait, made of 47 states, but it was made by the General Assembly of the United Nations.
So the Human Rights Council is the subsidiary organ of the UN General Assembly. What is the UN General Assembly? A body, one of the main institutions of the UN. Okay. All states participate at the General Assembly. They all have the vote. Resolutions are non-binding, but it promotes international law through soft law instruments, etc. Okay? The General Assembly has created the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council has 47 members, which are elected occasionally. And what is this institution doing? What is the purpose? What are its powers, competencies?
The child porn, human trafficking, rights to food, rights to water, different groups.
These are all in the in various treaties of the United Nations.
And why are they under the HRC now?
No, the treaties is something different. Treaties are, made by states, they bind states, they've used...
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the reporting. Later on talking about the special procedures, set up the reporting.
Okay, so you mentioned reporting, you mentioned special procedures. These are, other, more general. I mean, give me a list with the functions of the Council.
It has three main duties according to the resolution 16251. So it has to promote and protect human rights, and address situation of human rights violations and make recommendations. And especially it can make recommendations to the General Assembly for further development of international law in the field of human rights.
The main function of the Council is that it works as a platform where states are coming together with NGOs, with the civil society. They discuss, they elaborate standards, and then they report to the General Assembly. They send it to the General Assembly for states to consider them, and then hopefully at some point make a General Assembly resolution. At the same time, the Human Rights Council too can adopt non-legally binding resolutions. gave you two of the resolutions to read, which refer to the right of the child, just to link it to what we will be doing right afterwards. Okay? Are these legally binding? No. The function is similar to that of the General Assembly. However, the Human Rights Council has three more functions. Universal periodic review. Does anyone know what this is? You mentioned it. You mentioned the term, you mentioned the functions. What is a universal periodic review? The title, I think, is self-explanatory.
It reports to you.
Oh, it's just a review that is carried out in a cycle of 4 years on the country's human rights track record.
Okay, so it is monitoring what countries are doing in terms of human rights, and it issues reports. Special procedures, which simply enough means that the committee is, the council is alert about a situation in a particular field, area of human rights, or so thematic, or regarding the situation in a particular country, and it scrutinizes particularly a theme or a country. And then you have the complaint procedure. What is this complaint procedure, and who can access the council?
The complaint first. It is a process established to address consistent patterns of gross and reliable violations of all human rights and of fundamental freedoms occurring in any part of the world and under any circumstances.
So who can access that council?
The victims of human rights violations.
The victims of human rights violations. Is it the same like, the regional instruments for human rights protection, or the various committees operating under the UN covenants and treaties on human rights protection, like the Treaty for the Protection of the Child that we'll see today? Is it the same? So, you travel to the United States and the police treats you in a not very polite way, okay? Could you send a report, could you communicate this case to the Human Rights Council? Yes or no?
But theoretically, I could submit a complaint.
The rest of you?
You have to exhaust domestic remedies first.
Imagine you exhaust. Can you still go?
Well, wouldn't the special rapporteur go? You would, and they would put it in the report, and the report would go to the GA.
In a scenario like that, you could go before the committee of the ICCPR, okay? International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that we saw a few centuries ago. If this would be tantamount to torture, then you could go before the committee of the Covenant, the Convention Against Torture. But you wouldn't be able to go to the Council. Why? Because the precondition is that there is a pattern, so a systematic pattern of gross human rights violations. The Council is open to communications, to complaints by individuals, but it is not that we'll be dealing with each and every, case of human rights violation. You need to establish, and this is an admissibility criterion, so this is usually the job of NGOs, okay? This is an admissibility criterion. You need to establish that this is not just a random case, but that there is a pattern, there is a systematic violation of human rights, and this amounts to gross human rights violations. So, one, there is a qualitative and a quantitative threshold there, okay? Clear? And then this is confidential, which means that you might even have your identity protected. They will communicate the case to the government. They will invite the government to offer explanations. Overall, the effectiveness of this procedure is criticized. Okay, but this is a political organ. Quite often, the other governments will say, "Yeah, it is fine. Yes." So the government will always offer some excuses, and the other governments will accept it. So it's also a question of political bargain. It is a political procedure. Okay.
I have a question. So, which state can participate in this conference?
Which is that?
A state, like...
It can be against any state member of the United Nations. Okay? So, irrespective of whether they have signed a particular human rights treaty or not. And this is why I gave the example of the United States, because the United States hasn't signed any of the UN treaties on human rights protection. Okay? So, as long as you are a UN member state, which means you participate in the General Assembly, you are also bound by, you're under the authority of the Council, which is a subsidiary body of the General Assembly. Clear? Very last question for you with regard to the Council. What is the difference between the Council and the UN Human Rights Commissioner?
The Office of the Human Rights Commissioner.
The office of, the office of the Human Rights Commissioner, it's the Human Rights Commissioner, it's the head of the office, What is the difference between these two institutions in the structure of the UN?
Well, is it that the Human Rights Council is made up of 47 member states of the UN, but the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights is a sort of a branch or UN agency that deals with?
Yes, it is a branch, but it is under whose authority? Is it part of the General Assembly?
No.
No. Whose authority?
Secretariat.
The Secretariat. So, the main institutions of the UN, you know them. Among them you have the General Assembly and you have the Secretary General. Under the General Assembly, you have the Human Rights Council, which is a political institution. You have member states participating. It promotes human rights, it monitors states, etc., etc. And then you have the Secretary General as part of the Secretariat General. You have the Human Rights Commissioner, the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner, and it is in this framework that you have all the committees monitoring the UN conventions on human rights. So it is the Human Rights Commissioner, and then you have the committees that we can all make a complaint against the country for the violation of our rights under the ICCPR, socioeconomic rights, rights of the child, torture, etc., etc. Okay? You have now the structure in your mind? Okay. We're done with this. A few introductory points with regard to the Convention for the Protection of the Rights of the Child. And then I have quite a few of interesting debates for you. What is the Convention for the Rights of the Child? General features of it. How many states? How many protocols? What rights protected? The scope of the Convention.
It is an international treaty. It's binding to all of those who have signed it. It entered into force the 2nd of September of 1990. And it protects it protects a lot of rights regarding of children around the world. So it established basic principles as no discrimination, education, health, and so on that I reckon we're gonna discuss. And It's one of the most accepted treaties around the world, I think.
Okay. Mhm. How many states are bound by it?
Well, 196 parties except the United States, and signatories are 140.
Okay, the signatories are the states that initially signed it. Then you can accede to the convention. Currently, you have 196 states. This is a record. This is the most widely ratified convention in the world. Okay, we can discuss this in a minute. You have all the UN member states. You have states that are not members of the United Nations, either because most probably because they are not recognized by other states. There are problems as to whether they are states or not. And it is like the only state that did not accept to be bound by the treaty is the United States, which is consistently not accepting to be bound by international human rights treaties. Okay? Why do you think this treaty has so many ratifications? Why so many states accepted to be bound by the treaty?
Can be cynical.
Yes?
The children are less well threat.
Okay, yes?
To get a good image, to get one good imagination for the
To get, sorry, there?
get a good imagination.
Yes, I understand what you mean. To pretend to the other states you're good and willing to protect human rights. So a good reputation.
Yeah.
Yes. Other reasons? Yes, but why to get a good reputation? Yeah, I see that children are not cynical. Are disabled people a threat to states?
Well, we're talking about complex matters. A child is less likely to, unless you're on a ballet or something like that, and you're screaming for World War III, a child is less likely to be politically active. A disabled person is an adult.
Yes. Okay. What about reputation then? Why not to gain reputation by signing other treaties that would be equally inoffensive for the state, or less offensive than other treaties that are more political, and do it with the right of the child?
I think that one of the reasons for signing the convention is like children are the future of the humanity. So like the states really, I know I'm being like very naive, right? But I would say that
romantic.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. so like the states believe that they have to pay attention, special attention to the children in order to guarantee that they are going to have good civilians. And so,
Okay. So this is a cynical and this is a romantic approach. Yes. So investing for the future.
Yeah.
Other ideas?
Maybe it doesn't mean any trouble, like
Doesn't mean any trouble. Why?
like economic.
For instance, making a binding standard for all states that education until a certain point will be compulsory and will be free, costs money.
Okay.
Any other ideas? I'll tell you my own opinion in the end, if you are. Next point. So this is an international convention in the framework of the United Nations aiming to protect the rights of the child. Okay? As all other conventions, it has been signed and ratified, in that case, by a big number of states. It has been complemented with 3 additional protocols. Do you know what these 3 additional protocols are doing? First one, protection of children in the case of armed conflict. The second one, certain extra protection in in areas like pornography, for instance. And the third one gives the powers to the committee under the Convention, the Covenant on Civil and Economic, on the Rights of the Child, to hear complaints, to hear individual complaints. Okay? If you don't sign and ratify Protocol 3, the committee, which is established under the Convention, has no power to hear individual or interstate complaints. This might be an explanation why states were so willing to sign the treaty. Okay? At the beginning, the treaty did not contain strict mechanism for control. Okay? This is done with the third additional protocol, which is subject to the ratification of the state. So a state, and most states, among these almost 200 states, only few states have accepted to be under the authority of the committee monitoring the implementation of the covenant of the convention with regard to individual complaints. Okay? Next question. What rights, or before that, why do we need a convention for the rights of the child? Let me become a bit cynical here, and I could tell you that you know something. We have a convention on civil and political rights. We have a convention on socio-economic rights. We have a convention on torture, which, in a sense, I can understand it. Why? Because torture is so important, so political, etc., and controversial. But then, rights for women, rights for disabled, rights for the child, non-discrimination. Again, I could understand it. You need to set some light there. But why then to start making a convention for each and every vulnerable, in some cases, social group? Isn't it too much? Isn't it? It's like us lawyers, you know. In order to make ourselves more useful, we generate more treaties, more laws, more etc. So
That's positivist.
that's positivist. Yes, could be.
I would argue.
I'm a positivist, sorry, in a sense, partially, and I'm telling you, I'm asking you whether this is necessary.
I would argue yes, because without an express provision or a treaty expressly protecting a specific group, by having a general convention, sometimes it can be interpreted not to include a specific group, therefore kind of creating a loophole, I think maybe, and then that group maybe split.
Freedom of expression, okay? Is this a fundamental civil right? Freedom of expression.
It is, it's not an absolute right.
It is not absolute, but it is an important civil right. You can find it in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you can find it in the regional instruments of human rights, you can find it in the ICCPR, okay? You can also find it in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I think also for right of women. Okay, yes. Let's make a treaty. You will have freedom of expression, another treaty for you. What is the purpose of repeating that every human being will have freedom of expression?
It's because it differs for each group. So freedom of expression for a child is very different to freedom of expression for an adult. So in the Convention of the Rights of the Child, freedom of expression is protecting the child's ability to speak out for their own development, to ensure that there's safety within their own development, within personal development, whether it be if they want to be able to express themselves regarding their sexuality or within politically or whatever. But then when it comes to an adult, freedom of expression is very different. So you've got, I don't know, whatever adults do.
They talk about their sexuality.
No, I'm just not there.
What's wrong? What's wrong? I didn't answer.
Again, my point here is, can you reach exactly the same result through implementation and interpretation? Human rights, the law in general, this is positive, but the law in general, is abstract. Why? Because we want it to apply to as many situations as this is possible. The more abstract the law is, the more are the chances it will apply widely. And this is why bills of rights tend to be abstract and short. And then it comes to implementation, so you will have parliament, you will have a local governor, you will have someone in the state who will say, we will make a policy to enhance freedom of protection of children, of vulnerable people, of refugees, of migrants, of women. And then, if you as a woman, as a vulnerable person, a child, you think that you don't have, this is not protected sufficiently in your country, you can go before the courts and you can rely on the general principle, the general abstract rule, freedom of expression. You can say, well, this should apply in my case as well, and for that reason I want this. And judges will interpret and will develop it as they have been doing this for centuries now. So why do we need to have more laws, more, such proliferation, so much? Is it wasted paper?
I think now maybe we don't need like we needed in the past, but in the past we need something like focus on freedom, like women's rights, rights for women, and rights for child, because people didn't understand that they are really human beings. They think they thought they were different people. They had less rights. It's something about culture, and we
just the counter argument here. I know you wouldn't expect me to play the feminist role here, but the counter argument is that it is erroneous to think that because 50 years ago women were not allowed to vote and now they are allowed to vote, that this is the end of the story and we don't need more protection, that everything is fine, etc. Okay, and this is why I also made the point about vulnerability. You have this idea that some groups are not in the position they should be comparing to other groups. Also that some groups are, because of the nature of things, a migrant is a vulnerable type of person, okay? So maybe we need a protection, enhanced protection for refugees. I understand that to a certain degree we need to have some special rules for special groups in the society. But I'm just asking here whether a significant part of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, as an example, is mumbo-jumbo, is repetitions that, don't really, they are not really useful in the sense, or necessary, in the sense that we already have this.
No, I think it's completely necessary, at least within the development context. What they call the human rights-based approach says that it terms children, women, people with disabilities, refugees, migrants, so all of that category that have their own instruments in international law as people in vulnerable situations. And it seeks to ensure that the reason why they have their own instruments, that they are not left behind in the development process. So at least that's what the human rights-based approach to development says. So at least within the development context, it says that they should have their own specific instruments. And with the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it also meshes civil and political and economic and social rights in one instrument. But it seeks to protect these people in vulnerable situations to make sure that throughout the development process, no one is left behind and that the farthest behind are reached first. Well, that's just development languages.
Just a counter argument that, and I'll come back to you. Very good point that this convention and conventions of that type, this is not particular or exclusive to that treaty, but conventions of that type, they are all encompassing. So you have civil rights, you have political rights, you have social rights, you have economic rights, you have cultural rights, you have humanitarian law, how you will be protected in case of war while war is taking place. You have refugee, you have minority protection. If you read the convention, it has specific rights for children as members of minorities. In a sense, in that respect, it even goes beyond human rights, general human rights protection, because minority is a very political issue. It's a very hot issue that states do not wish to touch. Minority rights, internal self-determination, statehood, segregation. These are very political issues. You don't touch them. Nevertheless, this is in this convention. So these are all the composite treaties that they borrow from different families of human rights. They transform it they turn it directly with regard towards the protection of a particular group, children in our case, and they put everything under a common umbrella. In that respect, it might be useful. But let me give you a counter-argument. And then I have a legal question for everyone after listening to your argument. The counter-argument is the following. Forum shopping. Did you remember this case I gave you with regard to religious education in high schools? The same case went before the European Convention of Human Rights and before the ICCPR. It was the same lawyer, okay? So it was in a school, the parents decided that they were not happy with religious education. So they formed a group and they went to a lawyer, a very clever lawyer. And the lawyer said, okay, why to put all my eggs, all my money to invest it in one court? They might tell me no. What I will do is I will take that case and one group of parents go to Strasbourg, another group of parents go to Geneva. This is forum shopping. You shop, you choose the forum, the court, or the institution that you think would be more friendly to you. If freedom of expression, so imagine a scenario like that. You're a child, you're disabled, you are a European citizen, forget that. You live in Europe, and the country has also signed to the ICCPR. You can go to at least 5 different institutions, international institutions, the Committee of under the Rights of the Child Convention, the Committee under the ICCPR, the European Convention of Human Rights, the one on disabled. So 4 or 5 committees or courts dealing with exactly the same case. What is the danger? Fragmentation. Especially in areas, and this is something we will see later on, where cultural relativism plays a big role. This way, you are enhancing the danger, you are increasing the danger of fragmenting international law. Polyphony in areas like that can lead to cacophony. So, question mark, do we need it, yes or no?
I was going to say, I agree with Anna's idea regarding that historical issues are reflecting the fact that we have common conventions for discrimination and so on. And I also agree with Brian's point, talking about development countries where we need to actually have these kind of rules. And especially, I think we, like the United Nations, as a body, created like these treaties in order to actually limit the states' action. Like, because the states are sovereign, so if they are not buying by these treaties, if they don't agree to it, they are not going to care about children, women, immigrants, and so on. So, or probably they would, but...
If states didn't care about children, that would be the end of humanity. We wouldn't have states, that would be the end of history. They do care about children, and they have been caring about children even before the United Nations and before making that kind of history.
But not all of them. That's the reason we have this kind of convention, right? Because still states are being
You
like
said
trafficking.
it is investing in your future.
Yeah, I said that, but that's the reason we created. Because we need to actually remind the states that children are important. That they have to take care of women and so on, and just to limit the action that they are doing.
Okay, so repeating ourselves, adding more books and textbooks, more pages on textbooks, having extra seminars in modules like this one, and wasting huge amounts of ink, just, I'm trying to be cynical here. A legal approach, positivist one. What happens if there is not a direct clash. A real conflict, it is very difficult. I mean, I would say even impossible. Okay, but what if there is no absolute convergence in what a general human rights protection instrument and the special one, I already gave you the answer, like the Convention on the Right of the Child says? What happens in that case? Do you see my point?
No. Yes, it is.
Take any human rights provision of the ICCPR you want. Give me a right.
Yeah, I couldn't really tell you what ICCPR means.
International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
So I don't know what any the rights are underneath it.
We had a seminar on this, guys.
Education.
Huh?
Education.
Education is economic. It's not civil and political.
Right to freedom of expression, right to
Right to freedom of expression. And you said education, okay? Cultural right. You will find a clone, not a clone. You can draw a parallel between the Covenant on Socio-Economic Rights and the provisions of the right, the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Which one should be applicable?
It depends.
Hmm?
It would depend if the individual is a child or an adult. So if he's a child, then you have to apply the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Even though it's fragmentation, you have this principle of lex specialis.
Lex specialis, that's fine. Imagine you go not to the Committee for the Rights of the Child, but to the Committee of the Covenant on Socio-Economic Rights. As a lawyer, if you represent children tomorrow, you would have to rely on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And your argument would be that, you know something, I know that you as a committee, you're established to monitor the Covenant on Socio-Economic Rights, but this in reality is a lex specialis. This makes it more concrete, the provisions of the general human rights protection. So, this is general human rights protection, okay? And then you can make smaller homocentric cycles, okay? Imagine of a situation, you are a member of a minority, you are a child, you are disabled, and you are complaining about socioeconomic rights. The general framework would be the Covenant on Social and Economic Rights, okay? Or if you move to a regional system, for instance in Europe, in the Council of Europe framework, it would be the Charter of Social and Economic Rights, okay? This is general protection that applies to all human beings. And then you have instruments that take these general protection features and make it concrete with regard to specific social groups. So, minority will have the more concrete than disabled, than a child. In the same time, you could apply multiple instruments, and depending on your identity, if you're a migrant, if you're a child, etc., you could find the provision that is more special, that provides more detail with regard to your situation. And in reality, all those special, in a sense, instruments, what they do is that they establish thresholds and standards comparing to the general protection offered by the ICCPR, civil and political rights, and the socioeconomic rights covenants. Okay? So, yes, you have a right to education. This is general protection. But if I am a child, I know that I should be, it is compulsory for the state to pay for my education until that age. And this is a special rule that applies in my case and concretizes, sets a threshold with regard to the general rule on human rights, or the general rule of human rights protection. And if I am a child and a member of the minority, I know that you have to provide me free education until that level, plus you have to allow me to study in my language, to preserve my identity. And this has to do with the content of the education. Do you see my point? Yes? Clear? Okay. So, this is, from my perspective, the answer also to the question of why we need treaties like that. It might be a positivist argument, but for me, the added value of conventions like that is when they contain special rules comparing to the general rules. Because they set standards of protection. They set thresholds. If it is simply enough repeating that we have freedom of expression, this is waste of paper. And in treaties like that, you will have part of them that is waste of paper, but you will have also other provisions that are really significant, and not only for I see the point about developing countries, but also about all other countries. Okay? But this is my approach. You may disagree with it. Can someone read Article 19 of the Convention? Any volunteers?
States parties shall take all appropriate legislative, administrative, social, and educational measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury or abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, maltreatment or exploitation, including sexual abuse, while in the care of parents, legal guardians, or any other person who has the care of that child. And 2. Such protective measures should, as appropriate, include effective procedures for the establishment of social programs to provide necessary support for the child and for those who have the care of the child, as well as for other forms of prevention and for identification, reporting, referral, investigation, treatment, and follow-up of instances of child maltreatment described heretofore, and as appropriate for judicial involvement.
The key words here are no mental and no physical violence, injury, or abuse. Okay? What is meant by that? Let's put some music.
What do you mean? What is meant by that? Like, what is to what extent the children are protected by this?
What does it mean, mental and physical violence?
Exactly what it is.
Yeah, what is meant by that? This provision prohibits mental and physical violence, injury, and abuse. What is it?
Is there a definition for that? Like
This is what I'm asking you. Do you remember the discussion we had the other day here? I told you this might be culturally shocking for you, but I asked you if your parents were ever beating you. Yeah. It is prohibited by this article. Yes.
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 Yes. All of you? You don't know. But let me sit next to you. It's two of us. Anyone else who doesn't know? You've been beaten as a child. You know?
Why is it? Why is it prohibited?
About kids.
Read it. Does it talk about corporal punishment?
It's automated. Physical violence.
Physical violence.
All forms of physical violence.
Yes, is corporal punishment part of it? This is what I want. And not corporal punishment in the sense of torturing. We had this discussion about what is torture, the threshold, what is human. You remember? I'm talking about simple facts. Okay, let me tell you a story. I was once traveling with a friend of mine, Greek guy, and another friend, a Portuguese girl, to Spain for holidays, okay, as students. Ryanair. While you're students, just travel all over. Okay, so we visited Zaragoza. Nice place, relaxing weekend, etc. We visited one of the big churches they have, like a cultural monument. And there was a 3-year-old kid that was very naughty. The mother was really pissed off, so she started beating him on the, you understand. And the baby was crying. The Portuguese friend wanted to call the police. The Greek guy was shocked, paralyzed from shock. And I was like, okay, this is not a big deal. Is it a big deal or not? Did that woman at that point violate the fundamental rights of the child in accordance with the UN Convention? You can make it as legalistic and
Oh.
Yes or no? Yes. Yes? All of you? Do you agree?
Yeah.
I think technically, yeah, but it's cultural again, isn't it? I mean,
Who says she did not break international human rights law? Just raise your hand. It is not something that I would do, okay? But still, come on, I mean, open your eyes. This is our world. And there are things that are... I'm not talking about something cruel here, okay? It was not torture. It was not, the boy still loved the mother after
you have to
that.
extend it. I mean, we're talking about mental abuse as well. So that's the physical aspect. If a child's naughty and you slap her on the leg or something like that, that's a minor thing. But if you do not smack them on the leg, you have to do something else to coerce their behaviour. And that goes into mental abuse or mental attack. So it's alright, I'd send my daughter to a room, she'd freak out, she'd go to a room, and that was a punishment, and she'd go to a room and she'd sulk. So she wasn't actually physically
But this
assaulted,
can be also
but she
mental
needed to be
abuse.
mentally coerced, and that's mental abuse.
Okay.
So it's the effect on the child. If you tell a naughty boy, stop hitting your sister, and he just carries on hitting his sister, and you smack him and he carries on hitting his sister, it's not going to work. So you have to punish him.
This is the pedagogical approach. I see your point, but this is the pedagogical. From my perspective, as an international law lawyer, I want to know if this instrument sets a threshold. If, after the point of entry into force of this convention, states have a positive duty to arrest that woman and try her. Do you think that under public international law and that particular provision, Spain, the Spanish authorities, failed their duty to protect the child by arresting that woman? Yes or no?
No.
No. Someone might disagree, okay? But my point here is that we are talking also about treaties. This is not exclusive again to that treaty. Human rights are like that, okay? But cultural relativism in areas like children protection is more apparent, is more important. And I'll give you more examples, because this was an easy example. Okay? Before that, can someone read Article 3, please? This is the cornerstone. Another volunteer, please, for the same.
In all actions concerning children, whether undertaken by public or private social welfare institutions, courts of law, administrative authorities, or legislative bodies, the best interests of the child shall
The best interest of the child. This is the key word. Continue, but this is the key word. The best interest of the child.
shall be a primary consideration.
Mm-hmm.
2. States parties undertake to ensure the child such protection and care as is necessary for his or her well-being, taking into account the rights and duties of his or her parents, legal guardians, or other individuals legally responsible for him or her, and to this end shall take all appropriate legislative and administrative measures. 3. States parties shall ensure that the institutions, services, and facilities responsible for the care or protection of children shall conform with the standards established by competent authorities, particularly in the areas of safety, health, in the number and suitability of their staff, as well as competent supervision.
Mm-hmm. What is the best interest of the child? First question, what it means to you. And the second one, it's 3 dimensions, 3 functions, according to General Comment 14 that I gave you to read. What is the best interest of the child, first of all?
The child can have a normal life.
Child should, sorry?
Best
Can
interest.
have a normal life.
Normal life. Yeah. What is a normal life?
It's not disabled. It's not have some mental abnormal.
Mhm. What is normal changes from country to country, society to society. This goes back to cultural relativism. And personally, but this is a parenthesis I'm opening here, I don't like the idea of normality, in the sense that what is normal? What is normal? Is it either you have something which is coming from nature, and then all other people who go against nature are abnormal, or it is constructed by the society, and then we go back to the problem of the majority imposing its norms and ideals to the rest. So, but I see your point. This was just a parenthesis about the term. Again, what is...
Well, General Comment number 14 said that the concept of child's best interest is aiming at ensuring both the full and effective enjoyment of all the rights recognised in the Convention and the holistic development of the child.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went on to say that there's no hierarchy of rights and all the rights mentioned.
No hierarchy of rights, yes. Mm-hmm. The 3 functions of the best interest concept.
Well, it's a substantive right.
It is a substantive right on its own standing, yes.
Or fundamental interpretive legal principle.
So it is a principle that helps us interpret the other rights, yes.
And rule of procedure.
And the procedural requirement. So, this is a long comment. It has several aspects that are very interesting, and it links best interest with various other provisions within the... I will divide it to read it in its entirety. However, focus is, for me, these 3 dimensions of the best interest. As a lawyer, you can individually, independently rely on this provision. So you could go before a competent authority, a national court, and say you have breached Article 3 of the Convention. It is a substantive right per se. It has also the 3rd dimension, a procedural dimension, in the sense that when deciding, you need to take into account best interest when you are creating laws, the same, etc., etc. But the most important function for me is that this is a general principle helping us interpret other rights. Which means that this is what guides us in order to implement and give effect to the Convention. Okay? So I have prepared for you, I told you at the beginning that I was not planning to talk a lot. And I've already talked more than what I thought I would. We have 50 minutes. I have prepared for you 3 different scenarios. And if these are controversial, I will break you into 2 groups and I will ask you to answer the question on the basis of the best interest of the child. If these are not controversial, and because you're a very progressive group of students, you all agree that we shouldn't punish children, for instance, then what I'll do is I will divide you in smaller groups and ask you to both give the same argument. So, the first one. Do you think that same-sex couples, married or not, should be allowed to adopt children? Yes? Yes, all of you? Don't be afraid to be conservative. It's not...
No.
50% of the French people voted. So all of you, you all agree that gay people, for instance, a gay couple should be allowed to adopt a child?
Please background check.
Yes? Okay. Then, one group, second group. I want you to spend 5 to 10 minutes trying to build arguments on the basis of the best interest of the child.
So we say for just the best.
You're all for it, in favor of it, so yeah, in favor. But maybe there is a trap in my question. Keep listening.
No challenge.
So, 5 to 10 minutes, try, if possible, try to find a legal provision in the convention, a legal basis. If not, it is fine, general human rights will cover you. And try to give an answer on the basis of the principle, the criterion of what is the best interest of the child. Tell me what this would apply in this particular context.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Whether the same-sex couple can adopt a child? Is this the question?
Adopt a child.
I don't think it's a problem. In general sense.
I think it's a problem.
You think it's a problem? Okay, Anna. So we have to find exact definition of best interest from the General Comment 14, which she says. Where is it? Let's find that one first. Shall be the best interest of the child, 32, 35. What do you think? Is it a problem? Do you feel any problem?
I don't think so.
Yeah, same.
When we think about the best interest of
Yes.
children, is
So two same-sex couple, I mean, if they are 2 boys or 2 girls, they can even raise a child with all the amenities, all the rights provided to that child. Then there is hardly any problem of being same-sex for the parents.
If my sex direction is correct,
Okay.
I will don't like 2 mother or 2 father. You see, every life is suffer. You know what I mean?
You don't like, there's another thing, but it's not favorable to you, or it doesn't.
But
it is not compatible to you. It's different.
But you,
But it's not that, it's the aspect.
you like to say same sex is depend on your DNA. You know.
Just forget. Okay.
Okay. Say the article.
Can you just find the article, the provision, whether there is any? I don't have.
More beneficial to the, and be more, if we weigh up the welfare of the child, what's going to be more important? A child living
First of all, Sharmi, what do you think? Generally, I mean, do you think that the same-sex couple can legitimately adopt a child or not? You think they can?
they should.
Yeah, they should. Okay.
They should.
I do think.
They should permit to adopt.
Do you find any threat in the best interest for the child in that case? I mean, do you find any threats for maintaining the best interest for that adopted child? Any sort of threat in the family of same-sex couple? I don't find those.
Depends on how the child is.
I think the same-sex couple should allow to adopt same-sex children.
Same-sex children? That means what?
Do you understand?
A gay couple can...
Gay couple can adopt gay children. Yeah.
But
That's
how,
a suitable.
how do you know that the children
DNA can have theory to check DNA.
Very interesting.
It's about a niche thing though, I think.
But that's what we're looking for. We're not talking about it doesn't go to court. It's going to be
But then in the case of, but then when it comes to adoption, you're not.
同性夫妻收养同性儿童，
Put a child into an
那
extreme
那你不是同性的，你生活在一个同性 couple 里面就很难受啊，
I know, but is the best
对吧？
child in which case
English.
that child wouldn't go to that family?
And that's why we're
It's
looking
all
for
things.
this.
No, just confused.
We're talking, well, let's take the scenario.
each child should
I think we should take the scenario
have
of a
their
very
rights,
simple, straightforward
with
adoption.
this
A gay
with
couple
this
that
under
has
respect
the
and
vetting, that takes
ensure
about
their rights.
2 hours.
2 years-ish, roundabout.
Because as a marriage, the same couple marriage, they have no discrimination of the sex
Exactly
or
the
the
question. You said
or-
that's the exact word.
or others. So
On the extreme
if they want
conditions,
to adopt a
how does
child,
the best interest of the child
I think the child should
Wait, I'm confused
I
though.
think we're
should
literally
get
looking
the
at
respect without any
this provision
any the
provide a
discrimination
legal basis
of their
for adoption
of their
by a gay
parents.
couple. And I think by going into this extreme zone, we're completely getting off track.
My dear is
Well, I
correct.
don't think it has anything specifically for gay couples, but I feel we can look at the provisions that talk about parents of the child.
Yeah.
And if those provisions don't specify what form those parents take, then well, we say that it doesn't apply to same-sex couples as well. And I mean, there's a lot of provisions here that talk about the child in relation to parents.
Be able to use proportionality just in terms of what's
I also
more
like this term.
beneficial for the child to be in care by the system or to be part of a
Okay.
family unit.
3 points. The first one. This question could reach a court in different possible ways. Because as you identified, there are different provisions that could apply. Right to family, parents, right to marriage from another. Okay, so let me give you 2 different examples and show you how the same principle would come into play. The second point is that in reality we apply proportionality in both cases. So the best interest in my examples will be an element taken into account when assessing proportionality. So you can have a couple that goes on the basis of the right to marriage. And then you could have it. So this is couple. This is a child that could go on the right to family. Okay? If you examine the same question, so the same fact, this is a same-sex couple, and the question is about adopting, as part of their right to marriage or family, adopting a child. Is this any different at all in terms of interpretation from the opposite scenario? A child saying, you know something, I have the right to family, I have the right to be adopted by those 2 people who love me, but they happen to be a couple of the same sex. Is it any difference in there, in the legal reasoning? This is about the rights of the parents, and this is about the rights of the child. Does it make any difference?
Yeah, we have to give preference to the right of the child to have a family.
Okay.
Pay more attention to the child, to actually care about the child, whether the family, whether the couple is going to be...
This is not like that. It is not a case of the couple versus the child.
Yeah.
What you said which is true, I want you to translate it into an argument in this case and in this case. These are two different cases.
I'd say if we go down the route of the couple, it's the right of the couple to have a child, whereas for the child, it's the child's right to improve the
To have the family.
which I think is very different.
The validity or legality or legitimacy in no way preclude that two entity to ensure the holistic approach of development for that particular child.
Possibly. We will see that in a minute. What I'm asking you now is a very dry and technical question of legal interpretation. Forget this for a moment. You have a case, you're a judge, and you have a same-sex couple who says, we want to be in a position to adopt. What would you do in that case? Is there such a right? Yes, generally speaking, right to family. Is this an absolute right? No. Can it be limited? Yes. What could you do in terms of limitation? It is the right of those two people versus?
Would margin of appreciation apply in terms of if a country did not?
Sorry, margin of appreciation?
Say if a state, such as say Ireland, which are fundamentally always opposed to what
Forget the country for the moment. This is a human right. They go before a court and say, we are a couple, this is our right. Can this right be limited? Yes, it can be limited. What would you do? You would apply proportionality. So it would be the right, you would assess if it is necessary to limit the right of those people. What would be the conditions that you would, the circumstances that you would take into account? The reasons. What could outweigh, counterbalance the right of those people? Public interest, which in that case would be the interest of? Whose interest? The interest of the child. So, as an interpretative technique, these, in a case like that, concerning the rights of the parents, would come into play as part of the proportionality, and the judge would have to say, yes, you know something? You're right, this is your right to family, to adopt, you can adopt, non-discrimination, everything is fine. Let's see, are there any interests justifying limiting the right? Well, there might be. General interest protection. In the particular case, a general interest, we understand, we mean the interest of the child. In that case too, this would be exactly the same. Do you have a right to family? Yes, I have the right to family. I'm 15 years old, 12 years old. I want to be adopted by those two nice gentlemen who love me, and they happen to be a couple. Yes, should me as a judge authorize this? In principle, yes, unless if there are reasons making this impossible. What are these reasons? The interest of the child. So, I'm sorry, my voice is... My point, these are examples as to how the idea of the general interest of the child comes into play as an interpretative criterion, as an interpretative tool. Okay? And this also, if we think that when children are involved, what is the central question, the central preoccupation is to protect the interest of the child, we will find a way to integrate this in our interpretation. Second point. What are the criteria? Who will tell us what is the interest of the child?
Psychologists.
Psychologists. Anyone else?
Social workers.
Social workers. Anyone else?
Physicians.
Physicians. Possibly yes, if biology, if there is, if there is evidence showing that, whether this is inherited or not, etc. Yes, other ones?
Parents.
Huh?
Parents.
Parents.
With parents.
Parents, they are part of the issue here. They cannot provide us solid knowledge. Who can provide us solid knowledge? Science. Lawyers? No. So my point is that every time, because you all happen to disagree with this idea, okay? I'm not telling you whether this is the right idea, your idea that same-sex couples should be only allowed to adopt homosexuals.
Yeah.
I'm not saying if this is a right or a good idea, but my point here is that we, as lawyers, there are limits as to what we know as what we can do. And we need, there are two paths, two possibilities, and there is no third. Either there is knowledge coming from other sciences, life starts 2 weeks after that point. Yes or no? Or, if science cannot give us answers, then it's morality. So I would be very happy to discuss seriously that idea, provided that you would come and you would tell me, you know something, X psychologist, X study shows with statistical analysis that this happened in this society and this was not a problem. Or these reasons justifies doing it the way you suggest. And in the same way, I would expect you, the rest of you, to tell me, you know something, the interest of the child is supported by scientific evidence. Why? Because there is no difference if you grow up in a family with a heterosexual couple as parents or same-sex couple. Okay? Third and final point,
People think.
and most important I would say. Would you give the same answer? Would the criterion of the best interest of the child provide you the same answer if you were a judge in Poland, France, or Saudi Arabia?
I don't know you're going to say Saudi Arabia.
Iran? Would you give as a judge the same answer? No. Anyone would say yes? Yes?
No.
No.
Answer will be different.
Because when I ask you if it is the best interest of the child to be adopted with no discrimination between different same-sex couples, I thought you all told me, it is not a problem.
Here is not a problem.
Here is not a problem.
Yeah.
Like, if I was a judge in Mexico, I would take into consideration what science is saying, but also like, this is the argument that judges have been done in Mexico.
Social context.
They say children are gonna suffer from discrimination and so on.
Bullying at school, etc., etc.
Exactly.
Is this okay? Let me change the circumstances. You go to Mexico, okay? Okay, you go to Greece. It's equally conservative as a country, okay? And you have this debate, okay? We discussed the Valianatos case. I told you how difficult it was for the Greek parliament to pass the law in favor of same-sex partnership. And you had many of the MPs say, well, I vote this, but I will never vote for adoption. We need to protect our youth and all these romantic approach, okay? So, Greece is conservative. As a judge, you would need scientific evidence, and then you would also make that kind of balancing, and you would say, well, let's see, what are the circumstances here? Is this boy or girl going to grow up normally? Or it's going to be bullied, discriminated at school, etc., etc., etc. And you give a negative answer, and you say, no, I'm sorry, this is not the right of the couple, this is the right of the child, and I need to protect the child because this is not the best solution for the child. As a judge, in Greece, would you give exactly the same answer with regard to a child which has just escaped a war zone? So, to make it more practical, there are thousands of refugees fleeing war from Syria. They are in several Greek islands, okay? And there are many children with no parents, unaccompanied children, okay? Imagine there is a gay couple, so in the local society there is a gay couple and says, well, this little Syrian girl who will either die or go, you know, to an orphanage, etc., we like to adopt it. What is the best interest of the child?
Be adopted.
Be adopted.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Yes? All of you? So my point here is, and this is something which is in comment number 14, general interest as an interpretative principle applies on a case-by-case depending on the case, it applies differently. Which is why I told you that personally I see it as an element within proportionality. Because proportionality allows to give an outcome given the ad hoc circumstances, the concrete circumstances that apply in each individual case. So, as a matter of principle, in general, why not to allow same-sex couples to adopt children? However, this can be limited if the interest of the child dictates going for a different solution. Okay? And this is again an issue of cultural relativism. Second one. This is easier. Okay? What about male genital circumcision? Do you know what is male genital circumcision? You've all heard about female genital circumcision. Have you ever heard? We all agree this is unacceptable. What about male genital circumcision? Do you know what is male genital circumcision? Do you know?
I don't know. No, it won't be.
So it's a cultural thing. Normally, when a baby is a few days old, they cut the foreskin off the penis off.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I know what it is.
I wouldn't describe it.
And it's traditionally done in the Jewish faith.
Yeah,
Jewish
Jewish
and Muslim.
Yeah, I know.
However,
And Muslim.
in America, it's more like a cultural thing. Am I? Right?
Yeah, no, in America.
And for health reasons as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
health
in America it's
reasons.
massive.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
What is this TV series with the four ladies in New York?
Oh, Sex and the City.
Sex and the City. You should watch. There is actually one episode. Okay. So, you were saying?
Isn't it like
This is
more like a hygiene?
yes. So one of the rationales is hygiene. But in that case, we should apply to all people and not discriminate between. So, one group of children have higher hygiene standards, whereas another no. Or it is a cultural element, and the question is whether this is allowed and this is compatible with international human rights law. So, who thinks that male genital circumcision is a breach of international human rights of the child? 2. Okay, who says this is absolutely fine?
First time this year.
I don't think it's fine. I don't think it's fine.
You don't think it's fine, so 3 of you. Okay, I need one more to make a group. Who would like to play that role? Okay, I'll pick you. Sure. I'll pick you to be against it, okay? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, your group, the rest of you another group, exactly the same exercise. If you can identify a legal basis and justify on the basis of the best interest of the child. So, okay, I ask you to move somehow so that you...
Oh, there's 2 seats there.
Are the rest of you
In favor of.
What are the legal basis of
My laptop has gone, no charge. So, Sanu,
what was the article?
so we only 4.
it's
I would start with Article 19.
actually who is the
which
fourth
is
one? You are with this group.
this group
Yeah.
of the child from all forms of physical violence. I think the fourth form of violence a child is indisputably an act of violence.
I think
It is a big thing for health. Yeah, so
I'm in which group, sorry?
You're in this group, the big one.
Okay.
Can I ask you to join this group and discuss it together? Charmin, you just open the cycle.
What were you saying, sorry?
There are studies being done now which completely
Well, we
which
can use
are-
the
they
example
basically say that
of
when they
female
go to
genital
certain places,
mutilation,
it
which
doesn't-
actually
there's no health
in its
either way.
lesser forms has
Yeah.
been widely used
Yeah, it's
for
the-
male
it's the
genital
religious cultural thing that it has
effects
cleaner.
such as lessening sensitivity and it
Well,
not
we're
having
trying to
that
do
bad
that
of an
stuff
effect
for
because of the outer labia.
Help with this.
Sorry, I'm very graphic with this. It's very similar effect to the cutting of the foreskin, and that is considered.
Let me add an
and
extra
that's a
dimension.
cultural thing.
For those of you who say that this is not an issue, whether this should be done in a hospital or at home, following
What, like by a religious person?
No.
yes, following religious tradition.
Oh, okay.
We did
No.
Really, you need to circumcise you. We're going to give you all
Right. Well, cutting of the clitoris, that would be more like the cutting of the tip
So
of
do
the
we
penis.
Well, basically,
There's such help
like,
benefits
we
to
move
it.
the sensitivity of the organ that is using the foreskin and moving the labia.
Yeah.
Is to sensitize the organs to be less focused.
Oh,
Culturally less
dude.
focused on
I'm
sex.
just like, oh, the clitoris, I swear to God, I just felt sick.
Sorry, yeah, so I would agree. So
Article
would
24
So more extreme form
on the right
of
to health
So
of the
it's
child.
these two desensitize the organs. So you can
Doesn't-
have
Yeah.
Okay, so yes,
either
that's a
more
great
in a
point.
spiritual life. That's
So you can
It's like I
rely
did recognise about the child
To be honest,
highest
I
attainment
think,
of health.
thinking about
And because it's the highest academic standard, you
Thinking about
think it should be in the hospital.
Yeah.
no, I think
To combat disease and malnutrition.
an
Where
adult
does it say what disease?
should
Let's
not
see.
be allowed to do anything with that
Oh, very
child.
good.
Just if it's necessary
Disease.
for health,
That's a good way.
conditions and things like that.
And it's actually there's been many studies that show that it has no beneficial effect, not even in terms of personal hygiene. Like that's a myth that has been widely debunked by health professionals. It makes no difference to the hygiene of the person, basically.
If you should find a studies then.
But I'd say in cases where there's been complications with a child, yes, obviously you do it, but not
And
sort of,
just
hey, let's cut this guy.
Yeah.
Just because, yeah.
I do a
I
lot.
don't want to say
Yeah.
outcasts as much, too strong a word, but
Yeah.
potentially, like if you're just society,
The
basically,
teacher
it's
is talking about
expectation.
Oh, yeah, you can put the child.
So if you then grow
It's
up
actually
and then
social,
taking
like,
us next
yeah,
week,
like,
it's not transitional, just
Yeah.
like, kids find out or
asking.
Okay.
changing the
We've
shoes.
got Article 5 as well.
Oh, right.
I said, you know, it's
So
like
single
change
is
of
gonna.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. If the child lives in a context of violence.
2 more minutes.
That's the standard.
Yeah,
And
the good faith discrimination.
educated, like, whatever.
We used to call it the campaign for the education of
So,
the
Article
children.
5 as well,
It might
which
be
is with respect,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
responsibilities, rights to use as parents where applicable.
Also,
Members of the extended family
basically,
are providing for local
That was
custody,
your,
legal guardians are legal risk of the child.
Because I think that's regarding like heart food and that kind of thing.
Because
I'm
it's
not
a
sure.
because it is a parental
It's
decision
just
when
like
it is done.
But then there's that race, but that's the level too. So
Yeah,
the
go back to the health.
What the rights of the parents are, what the rights of the child are, and are they the same? So I think Article
It'll be an FGM.
But it's just
It says that it's for medical reasons.
I think it was added later.
Okay, can I ask you your opinions? Let me start with the small group. Let's. This is.
Well, my starting point was Article 19,
Mhm.
which is obviously prohibition against protection of the child against all forms of physical violence.
Mhm.
And I think the cutting of the foreskin, because you're physically cutting a child, is an act of physical violence.
So no child should ever be operated by a surgeon.
Well, that's where
Unless
Anna
there's a
came
medical
in.
necessity.
No, but if it's to health purpose,
Mhm.
it's okay.
Mhm.
It's something that
So
it's
okay,
important. It's the best.
you're distinguishing then between
Yeah, but
acts,
something
medical
that-
acts,
yeah.
and these on the basis of necessity, whether this is necessary or not. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because like I mentioned before, there's been a lot of studies that have been carried out that show there's actually no medical benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Even the whole hygiene argument has been widely debunked.
From this group, David will be the only one who will agree with you. But
So, and then with me and Cal, we talked about a lot about the link between female genital mutilation and male circumcision. So the lesser form of FGM, which is I believe the cutting of the labia, that is purely done to desensitize a person, and that is illegal, and that's the most similar procedure to male genital circumcision. And that's
but it doesn't
illegal.
have the same effect on men.
To some extent it does, because it is, so it may be the wrong form that I'm thinking
Sex
of,
and
but
the
there
City
is,
will disagree with you.
there is a form that's very much like the male genital circumcision, and that's illegal. So why?
So you're drawing a parallel and you make an analogy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's important. Like if
You don't think it is, because that's what I would ask you.
I don't think
All-
it's the fundamental.
All these are reasons why we shouldn't do it. But what is the interest of the child in that case? And I can give you, let me ask this group to give counter arguments, and then I can give you a counter argument.
Can I give a counter argument for the FGM? Well, the reason that FGM is so frowned upon and it's legal is because it's done to make girls basically make them sexually inactive, so that they don't enjoy sex, so they stay virgin for longer. Whereas for male circumcision, it's always been a case of for the health benefits or for the religious reasons. So it is two fundamentally very different reasons.
That's why I went with the lesser form, not the highest form. Yes, the highest form, absolutely. However, with the male, with the removal of the foreskin, it is done to desensitize. Same way that the lesser form of
For the sake of time, if I can interfere here, you see this as one and the same thing, different levels of gravity. You see this as two different things. Interest of the child.
Well, we felt like if the child is growing up within a context where male circumcision has sort of cultural and religious connotations to it, and for a lot of societies in the global south, for example, the level of manhood is attained through circumcision. And if you're not circumcised as a male boy, then you will be looked at as not having achieved manhood, and you'll be ridiculed. There'll be a lot of discrimination. So the best interest of the child in that case, to be able to exist in society without forms of discrimination, will be to get circumcised. But we also clarify that it should be within the context of a doctor, because according to Article 21, highest standard of attainable health. So we would clarify that and say that it's within the context of a doctor. But the best interest of the child is to grow up in a context where there's no discrimination.
And what I would add here as a counter argument is the idea of belonging into, a social group, being a member of a group, etc. Other arguments?
Well, so we didn't discuss this group. Isn't it supposed to be safer to do it than as a child than as an adult? I believe. I may be wrong on that.
Safer, no, less painful.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, less invasive.
But on the other hand, if you do it as an adult, this is your decision. You do it for your own reasons.
Yeah.
You should watch this episode of this.
This is argument of autonomy. Sort of,
and this is a grown man who decides he wants to do this because he wants to discover new horizons in his sexual life, etc. So it's you do it for your own reasons.
No, yeah, like we were reading this study of the NHS that says that sometimes sex could be painful for guys who doesn't have circumcision. So that's the reason they actually get it. And I also
so scientific knowledge, autonomy, philosophy, the two bases to make decision in that case is, and it is a matter of interpretation of what is the best interest of the child. Third scenario for you. Before that, I was ambivalent between this particular scenario, which I hope that will divide you in two. I mean, that's the purpose. It's very, controversial. But before that, I was in between this scenario and another scenario, just to see what you think. What about marriage age? So, should an adult be allowed to get married to a woman who is 12 or 13 years old?
No.
No? All of you? No? My grandmother got married at the age of 13, actually.
How old was your grandma?
Yeah, that was
My grandfather was almost 30.
Oh,
Was that in a village?
This was... It was not a village, it was a town, not the capital, it was a town.
In a lot of countries, it tends to just happen in lots of village areas. It's because so frowned upon.
The reason why I said this is cultural elements. Okay, so this was a strong cultural element in the at the time. A second, how things evolve, how things change. This was the rule in many societies just 100 years ago. And this is when my grandmother got married, almost 100 years ago. So, how the society changed, how ideas changed, how things evolve. This was the rule in many societies. When, of course, we didn't have equality between men and women, and the woman belonged to the father, and the father would decide, and marriage was, as a social, the social connotation and meaning of marriage was something different. It was a contract between two families. So, my last controversial question for you. What should be, in accordance with international human rights law, always the minimum age for consensual sexual activities between an adult and a child, a minor? What do you think?
Doesn't that go to what constitutes the age of a child, what constitutes the age of an adult?
According to the convention, the age is 18. And it's very clear, it is, the convention starts this way. The age, you're a child until the age of 18. I don't want to ask about any personal experiences, but do you know Mélenchon, the guy in France, who is about to get the elections?
The commie.
Hmm?
The commie.
Yeah. Do you know how old is his wife?
It's a school teacher's man.
Mm-hmm. He's 39, 40, early 40s. She's 64. And she used to be his school teacher.
But when they started this relationship?
When he was she was his school teacher.